Empty plots line the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin, where businesses once stood. These are the scars of the riots that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man, by a white police officer last summer.
What do we want? Justice!
The protests here followed similar scenes witnessed across the nation after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor.
People are fed up. And if it could happen to little Jake, and it could happen to Mr. Floyd, and it could happen to Breonna Taylor, then it could happen to you.
Justin Blake is Jacob Blake's uncle. He's optimistic for change under a Joe Biden presidency.
We think Joe Biden's one of those guys that's going to put his everything into making sure this happens. Not far off in the future, but today. He understands how significant, how important it is to our community to see something tangible within the first year, within the first 6 months.
This park outside the Kenosha courthouse was the focal point for protest groups following the shooting of Jacob Blake. Although quiet now, anger within the community remains. But for many groups here now, the focus is on implementing real change and addressing the root causes of systemic racism and social inequalities. Tanya McLean is the executive director of Leaders of Kenosha.
If you're worrying about, how you're putting food on the table, you're not worrying about what's going on at the city council meeting. The president, yes, it's a big deal, but it's about the local stuff.
The movement to defund the police became a rallying cry at protests across the country, while Biden does not support the concept, arguing instead that police need more funds. He is promising investment in community services and violence prevention.
We live in food deserts. And then in the community, black and brown communities, the education. The education is the worst. If we had resources in our community, we wouldn't have so much mental health or unemployment, because people would want to work. People want to be productive citizens.
Economic inequalities have been laid bare in recent years. Black home ownership is at its lowest level in 50 years. Biden's proposals include boosting lending to entrepreneurs of color and restoring infrastructure in minority communities.
Rebuilding public housing, that's new for the United States. And a lot of public-private investment partnerships to invest in black and brown communities. So I think we'll see some redirection of resources on a fairly large scale into black communities.
Michael Dawson of the University of Chicago believes it's a race against time for Biden to implement his policies, given the Democrats are also currently in control of both houses of Congress.
In the first 2 years, this is the time to go big, not small. This is not the time for incremental change. If you want really transformative programs, now is the time to launch them.
There are high expectations of significant change under President Biden. Communities of color across the nation will be watching closely to see if policy can take a major step forward. Dan Williams, CGTN, Kenosha, Wisconsin.